There are surely a lot of things that can break your heart in life. Losing your job, getting rejected, breaking up from a relationship, and several others that definitely fall into that ship are some of those things. But watching your 5-year-old son holding a casket with his dead little sister in it is next-level heart-wrenching, and something you'd never even want to wish on your worst enemy. Unfortunately, this is something that Megan Collard had to go through. Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story. After having their 2 boys, Caden and Franklin, looking forward to having a girl would surely not be a selfish ask for Megan and her husband. Megan really wanted a girl after having the boys, and she wouldn't have had it any better when she finally discovered her new bundle of joy, Piper Winifred, on July 19, 2017. The thought of having her was something that got Megan really excited, as she had been anticipating the moment right from when she knew she was expecting a girl. Piper's brothers were also quite excited with having a sister too, with the boys even choosing clothes for her. Things just seemed to go on really well with Piper and her family. She was eating well, sleeping well, and doing every other thing as well as you'd expect from a baby. All of a sudden, things began to go sideways in May 2018. Piper was unusually vomiting and having really high temperatures, which really bothered her parents. They didn't waste any time to get her checked, and what was first called an ear infection was then termed a virus. And before they knew it, there was a lump on the right side of Piper's belly, which was then confirmed to be a swollen liver, which needed urgent attention, especially since Piper was barely a year old. In May 2018, Piper began vomiting. We just thought she had gastro, but then she spiked really high temps, so I got her checked by a new GP. He was worried about her pale skin color and said to come back in a week for a full blood count if her color didn't return. He prescribed her antibiotics for what he thought was an ear infection. I did end up taking her to hospital when her temps got really high, and we got turned away. It was just a virus. Exactly 1 month later, she started vomiting again. As I was feeding her, I felt a hard lump on the right side of her belly. I instantly got a bad feeling about it, so I got her into the GP that day. He felt it straight away and got his colleague to check. They both agreed it felt as though her liver was swollen. They sent us straight to hospital. I had all 3 kids with me at the GP and no family close, so we had to wait for their dad to get home from work so we could take her to get checked, Megan said. After that encounter, the couple proceeded to a hospital to get their little baby checked, and there, they found out that the possible reasons for her enlarged liver was any of HIV, hepatitis, or cancer. In Piper's case, the first 2 were unlikely the problem because Megan had taken tests for both before pregnancy, and the results were both negative. And in that case, if anything was wrong with Piper, it had to be cancer, something that didn't go well with Megan, especially since she was there getting the news alone while her husband had to be with the boys and also try to continue working amidst everything. The following day, further tests were carried out, including her blood work, which particularly came back abnormal. As if that was not enough, they had to even take more tests and scans to get answers to what was wrong with Piper. After a while, Piper was admitted into the oncology ward, and when that happens, you definitely know it's not good news, and quite immediately, Megan and her husband knew something was up. Eventually, they got answers, even though it was one they would have done well without, that their daughter Piper had cancer, neuroblastoma to be precise. We spent the entire day doing scans and tests trying to get some answers. We were then given a room on the oncology ward. Instant heartbreak. Later that afternoon, we were told our perfect little 11-month-old baby had cancer, neuroblastoma to be exact, Megan recalled. Neuroblastoma is a cancer that develops from immature nerve cells found in several areas of the body, and it is usually found in the adrenal glands, with children aged 5 or younger being the most affected by this type of cancer. Neuroblastoma also has one of the lowest survival rates of all pediatric cancers and accounts for 15% of all pediatric cancer deaths. And with stats like that, Piper's survival was surely hanging by the balance, especially since the cancer had spread much more than anticipated. We knew from the scans that Piper was stage 4 as it had already spread from the adrenal gland to the liver, lymph nodes, abdomen, chest cavity, and ovaries. The thing we didn't know was whether she was high or intermediate risk, which would determine how much treatment she would need, Megan recalled. After the discovery, further tests would be conducted, and Piper's case was tagged high risk. For a parent, this was tough to deal with for Megan and her husband, who were new to this sort of experience or feeling and witnessed nothing like that when they were having their other children. It wouldn't take long for Piper to start chemotherapy, and it wasn't the best too, as she had to deal with some serious side effects that really aren't ideal for kids, all after several rounds of chemo, as well as other treatments, including surgery, stem cell transplant, radiation, and immunotherapy in line for her. With all these going on, it was of course not easy to take proper care of the children and work too, and the couple had to rely on their family to come over to stay with the kids while her husband did the work part, so they could maintain a good living and still have a roof over their head. With this, Megan was the only one around Piper again, and it was devastating to see her daughter, whom she had desperately wanted, battling with so much pain, while she also missed out on doing things with her boys. You don't want to disappoint any of your kids or treat one of them as more important than the other, but at that time, Piper's treatment was our biggest priority, Megan said. The coming weeks would be hard for the family, with stem transplant next on the list for Piper. During this treatment, they were isolated from their daughter for 4 whole weeks, and even her brothers were starting to worry. She didn't see her brothers for 3 weeks. They would both cry and beg to see her, which was absolutely heartbreaking. My husband luckily had most of that time off to help me, as we basically couldn't get any sleep, with Piper up most of the night, being sick or in pain. Something you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy, Megan said. At this time, Christmas was fast approaching, and despite not expecting Piper home yet, their daughter was discharged on Christmas Day, which was surely the best possible gift the family could have hoped for. Weeks later, hospital visits would become more frequent, and by March 2019, Piper was looking like a completely different kid, losing weight and even being unhappy. Later on, she would then have difficulty walking and would want more cuddling. Piper was then holding her stomach and saying ouch at some point, and this worried Megan because she believed that if her little girl was holding somewhere and saying ouch, then she must be feeling some pain there. Unfortunately, her appeals to the doctors to get Piper checked would be dismissed, and even then, she thought she was overreacting because of another case that had happened in the ward. Even though there was still disease in her liver on her last scan, the doctors dismissed our concerns, saying it was just a virus or the treatment. But for a not even 2-year-old to pinpoint a spot and say ouch repeatedly was just plain odd. We had just lost a little friend from the ward who was Piper's age, who died after relapsing, and the doctors not listening to her mom. So I thought maybe I was just overreacting and thinking the worst. I fully trusted our doctors, Megan said. Much later, on June 8th, Piper developed a huge lump on her belly button, and they proceeded to the hospital where their worst fears would be confirmed. Piper's tumors had spread. Megan was obviously angry since she had raised concerns about Piper's condition but got dismissed, and at that point, there was little to do other than figure out what to do next. The chance of relapse is 50% for high-risk neuroblastoma. I began researching all our options, and we decided we would be heading overseas to take part in trials for relapse neuroblastoma. Unfortunately, we got the news that her liver had far too much damage, and she wouldn't be accepted in any trials because of that. We decided to do chemotherapy here to try and get rid of some of the tumors on her liver to improve the function so she would be accepted, Megan recalled. The idea of chemo to remove some of the tumor didn't work as expected and only seemed to get worse. And then, the hospital sent them home to wait and see if the chemo would work. And just then, Megan and her husband had to do the most difficult thing any parent shouldn't have to do, telling their boys, Caden and Franklin, that their little sister could yet be on her way to heaven. Caden, who is now 5, instantly said we had to find her a new doctor or make her soup to make her better, but eventually understood that no one would be able to help her. This was the hardest thing we had to do, Megan said. After that day, things didn't seem to go fine, and on June 20th, 2019, Piper started vomiting blood, and Megan had to call the attention of the home nurse, and before they knew what was happening, her husband, who had taken Caden out, was home to say his last goodbyes to his daughter. Later that day, Piper took her last breath, and that moment is one that Megan would never be able to get out of her head. Together with her husband, they had Caden and Franklin say their goodbyes, and then the funeral home came to take her away. We got Caden home and woke Franklin up out of bed. They got to cuddle their baby sister one last time and say goodbye. The funeral home came and got her just after midnight. Watching your little girl be placed onto a sterile metal bed in the back of a white van all on her own just shatters every inch of you, Megan recounted. Piper was buried on the 1st of July, just 18 days before her second birthday. And while that was enough to shatter Megan's heart, getting to see her 5-year-old Caden carrying the casket of his little sister broke her heart even more, though it did also make her feel proud. The days, weeks, and months following that were of course not easy, and the family had to grieve and also help Caden and Franklin grieve their sister too. Moving on from such a heartbreaking experience is not easy for anyone, and even Megan knows that, and she is even now more than ever grateful for having the boys, even though she would have loved to have Piper around too. If you enjoyed the video, kindly give it a thumbs up, leave a comment in the comment section, and share with others. Thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one.